So the next speakers are from Lithuania, Rūtilė and Greta, and they're going to talk about the restoration of a painting from BABICKAS collection.
Good morning, dear colleagues and dear hosts of the conference. A little bit sorry for my voice. It's not in a very good condition. So I shall start. In 2014, the Maironis Museum of Lithuanian Literature received a collection of items and artworks previously owned by PETRAS BABICKAS. BABICKAS was a pioneer of Lithuanian journalism, a publicist, writer, translator, diplomat, historian, painter, and photographer, and was the first Lithuanian radio announcer. He was interested in folk art and had collected old books, magazines, photographs, paintings, quilts, carvings, traditional sashes, amber articles, and various other small ethnographic items. In 1944, to avoid possible repressions, BABICKAS fled to the West. He worked at the Lithuanian mission in Rio de Janeiro as the secretary and cultural and press attaché. His sister sent over the collection which the diplomat had gathered in Lithuania. BABICKAS wished to establish a museum there. Unfortunately, he was unable to realize his dream because the Lithuanian mission in Rio de Janeiro was recalled. Around 1970, BABICKAS was becoming concerned about the future of his precious exhibits. BABICKAS was provided with financial support with his friend, historian Bronius Kviklys, and sent his most valuable exhibits over to Chicago. After Kviklys died, the exhibits were inherited by his three daughters, who then donated a part of BABICKAS' collection to Lithuania. Among the items and artworks that arrived was the painting, PIETA. The figures in the painting are portrayed in a primitive manner. The painting's extremely thin, fragile wooden support was badly deformed and had broken into 5 pieces with multiple cracks. There were also missing fragments of wood. Several holes left by entomological damage were noted in the middle of the painting. The paint layer has a lot of craquelure. Wrinkling can be observed where the paint layer is thicker. The paint had darkened with small dark gray spots in light-colored areas that form larger areas on the depicted Christ's body. The assumption could be made that it is lead sulfate that formed as a chemical change of the lead white pigment. And the most interesting and rich in information was the backside of the painting. The structure of the wood and multiple damages, which are unusual for paintings on a wooden support, are clearly visible there. The wooden surface was rough, with many unevenly spaced, narrow, wavy protrusions, on some of which glue and cardboard residues were apparent. The type of wood was found to be unusual for the local Lithuanian species. Therefore, extensive research was carried out to identify it. The wood species was determined through an anatomical analysis of the diagnostic characteristics of the wood's microstructure using biological microscope in 3-directional sections, following the methodology created by Schweingruber, as well as the anatomical guide to the world's tree species by Hoadley. The cross-section revealed features of coniferous tree. The wood features on the longitudinal radial section referred to Cupressaceae family, and by very special features on longitudinal radial section, the species of the wood was determined. The painting was found to have been painted on a piece of coast redwood. Capable of attaining heights of over 100 meters, coast redwood is the world's tallest tree species. Their trunks reach diameters of 3 to 6 meters. Coast redwood grows in a very small area on the Pacific coast of northwestern United States, in the states of California and Oregon, where heavy rainfall and damp air create a unique environment for these trees. So it is likely that Petras Babickas had acquired the artwork from a local artist traveling around the area. Microscopic examination of the backside of the painting revealed that the wood had been damaged by insects, which had destroyed a big part of it. Entire areas have been gnawed away. Bridges of about 1 millimeter high have been left. The remaining intact wood of the insect bridges is carved away. And this type of damage was typical to a group of wood-feeding drywood termites. These termites live in tropical climates and are particularly abundant in the tropics of the southern hemisphere. They are found coastally from South Carolina westward to Texas and up the west coast of California. These termites are characterized by extensive gorges that cover large areas of wood, leaving horizontal bridges necessary for insect movement. This type of termites does not need moist soil or water to survive. When digesting the wood, insects create a moist environment suitable for themselves and vegetate in the deeper layers of the wood, leaving behind only a thin outer shell. The nature of the damage suggests that the painting had been affected by termites, destroying the inner layers of wood, leaving only a thin layer of it under the paint. It is likely that painting had been reduced in thickness and glued onto cardboard and later separated from it. The surviving support panel was now too thin to withstand the stress of deformation. Thus, the wood was warping along the growth layers, damaging the painting. Chemical analyses were carried out in order to study the paint layers. The painting was found to have been painted on a thin, white-colored primer layer, which contained gypsum. A substance of protein origin was detected in it. In the brown paint, there were detected pigments containing iron ions. The white paint contained white lead pigment, while the blue paint contained synthetic ultramarine. And also some unusual findings in the painting. After a stratigraphic analysis of the paint in the area of depicted halo of the Blessed Virgin Mary, it was found a white-colored metal layer between the paint layers. After an elemental composition analysis, it was found to be silver plating. There was probably a special creative solution of the painter. Also, fine glassy particles were observed in the paint layer of the background around the figures. An electron microscopy and an energy dispersive spectroscopy analysis showed that this was crushed glass, that the artist had added to the paint to give a radiant effects to the painted rays. An ultraviolet examination of the painting showed that some areas have been corrected and there were isolated cases in areas depicting the hair of both Mary and Christ that had been painted over. An examination in ultraviolet lighting more clearly revealed the pattern, especially of the rays in their area around the bodies of depicted figures. No changes to the drawing are visible. And when planning the conservation processes, we have to pay a particular attention to the special nature of the damage of the support panel. The fact that the surviving wooden support was too thin to sustain the deformational stress during the natural drying and swelling of the wood made the conservation processes more difficult. The wood reacted particularly sensitively to the slightest changes of the humidity of the environment. Therefore, we had to pay a great attention to the choice of solvents. During any conservation work that involved the use of moisture, we had to dry the painting in a way that reduces the existing deformations and did not cause new ones. We had three main tasks in our conservation work, and the first one is to join the fragments of the broken support into a continuous surface and smooth out the deformations. The second one is to smooth out the surface of the termite-damaged wood on the back side by forming a filler. And the third one is to line the painting onto a new stable support. The painting was sprayed with 1% Klucel hydroxypropyl cellulose solution in distilled water and ethyl alcohol and lightly pressed. After removing the cardboard residue, fragments of the support were put back in their places. The joints and cracks on the backside were reinforced with strips of tissue paper. Here I must notice that during the procedure, we had to press the treated places lightly to dry out immediately in the process. After this and the following conservation procedures, we had to place the painting in the press, allowing the moisture to soak slowly into the filter paper and broadcloth as evenly as possible, regularly replacing the moistened sheets with dry pieces. The painting was then sealed with tissue paper to allow for safe work on the back side of the painting. In areas where there were losses of wood, Cycle 700 adhesive was used to patch in thin pieces of hornbeam wood veneer. After this, we had to smooth out the termite-damaged wood by forming a smooth surface using a filler. The possible filler materials were tested on a small hornbeam veneer sample models, imitating the structure of the painting. Linden wood dust was sifted through a dense sieve. Its acidity was measured at 5.56. We preferred using cellulose esters, adding them as adhesive materials. Model samples were coated with the materials or their mixtures. After these fillers dried, their elasticity, hardness, and adhesion to the surface were evaluated. And a mixture of 5% Klucel G adhesive, wooden dust, and chalk was determined to be the most suitable. Firstly, cotton gauze, Before forming the filler, we had to think about the material that would reinforce the adhesion of the filler to the surface, as well as adhesion between the filler layers, and would stabilize the support panel. The material had to adhere well to the uneven surface, and while thin, it should have strength. Cotton gauze met all requirements and was chosen for this purpose. Yes. Firstly, cotton gauze was glued onto the backside of the painting with Seckle 700 glue. Then the filler mass was spread over it evenly in a thin layer using a spatula. 3 layers of the filler and reinforcement between each layer were created this way. After each applying, the painting was placed in the press for full drying, pressing it lightly between filter paper and broadcloth to avoid deformations. Before placing into a press, a surface was covered with Tyvek film to prevent it from sticking to the filter paper. By drying the filler slowly and gradually, we managed to form a smooth surface of the desired thickness of about 3 millimeters. And the painting then was lined onto a high-quality birch plywood sheet. The surface of it was roughened using sandpaper and saturated with Seckle 700 adhesive, which was then also used to glue the painting and the prepared sheet together. The artwork was kept under the light pressure for 2 weeks, constantly replacing the filter paper and broadcloth with dry pieces. The inserted patches of hornbeam wood and small areas of loss were coated in glue and primed with restoration primer. Once the required thickness of primer was built up, a surface imitating the texture of the painting was formed on the primer surface using a rough brush. A mixture of distilled water and ethyl alcohol was used to clean the painted surface. It was added Glucel E adhesive to it as a thickener to prevent solvents from the penetration deeper into the wood. Retouching was done in watercolor. The painting was framed in a custom frame and prepared for its display in a museum. A complex technological analysis of the painting has revealed the type of wood used, the nature of the damage, and identified the painting materials. Following the results of investigation, deformations were smoothed out after choosing the appropriate conservation materials and methods, and the painting was lined onto a stable support. The integrity and stability of the support panel were restored. And losses of wood and paint layer were restored and retouched. So thank you for your attention, and great thank you for the great team of Pranas Gudinas Restoration Center colleagues in this project.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have some questions? No. But I'm asking about the collection and the termites. In the collection, does any other works have been eaten by the termites, or the object was isolated from the other works?
We have 3 objects of this collection, but no termites damage were on the other artworks. So only this.
Okay.
Yet. And thanks God we don't have termites in Lithuania. Of course.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.